Welcome to the Unchurching Podcast. There's just so much more. I think a good place to start is just at the beginning. You know, I know, like, we've spoken about your journey through the books in the last episode and stuff, and that's been an amazing roadmap for us. But I remember the first moments, for me, it really started with me just finding it very difficult to be at church.
Yes.
Yes. I mean, for years
I'd always,
because for years I'd always been like kind of questioning a lot of stuff that we would do and say and stuff. And I know, like, we'd sit in meetings and you'd even be like, just sit down, don't say anything, control yourself, sort of thing.
So uncomfortable. Life was so uncomfortable for me.
And there were some conversations I just had anyway, and you were like, oh. But that's a confrontation thing, not like you were hell-bent on the truth thing. But I tell you what, I came to a point where I'd started having these conversations with this friend of mine just a little while prior. Told me about Shane Willard, some of those speeches, about putting some language to some of the questions I had. And then we read the first book that he recommended, which is Universal Christ.
Yes.
And when that happened, things opened to us. But even before that, I felt like I couldn't dissect what I was feeling inside, the doubts and things that I'd had about church and about our practices and things, while I was sitting in church on a Sunday.
Yeah, it was really hard.
I just found that completely overloading to hear both those voices. And so I actually stepped away. And initially I just stepped away saying, look, I am a theologian. I do need to go figure this out. And I'd like you on the journey with me, to our leadership and friends. And they didn't join the journey.
No.
There was very little interest in such. And that was the first, I think, moment for me where I was like, okay, hang on.
What's going on?
What's going on?
Yes.
Yeah.
Why does this feel so? Why does me wanting to go on a journey to find the truth, not just for yourself, but maybe for everyone?
Right. Why is that a bad thing?
Why is that a bad thing that you want to figure some things out as an individual?
Yeah, and shouldn't you want me, I'm going to say again, this should be for everybody, but as a theologian in the church, to actually discover if there's truths that we're getting wrong?
Yeah, what if there's
what if there's more?
Now it feels weird, but back then we didn't question how absurd it was for people who really relied on your voice in the church.
Right.
Why there was a sudden cut off and sudden
but why did nobody but one person in the church ask me, and that person was a friend of mine, is a friend of mine. So, well, I don't know. we're drifting, but we're kind of friends, if I'm honest. And I think he'd say that's honest too. But at the end of the day, why should I feel that way? I think that was a big question for you. Why was I made to feel like I was doing something wrong when I know in the purity of my heart I was trying to do something right?
You were trying to explore things that you were feeling because you have a connection to God too, right? And so you had feelings that you wanted to explore, and you weren't explicitly like, I want to go explore things outside of the church and into awakening consciousness and all these things. You didn't know what you were exploring. You just wanted to go and explore as an individual, which is ridiculous.
That is not allowed. You cannot do that.
That's Clint's best South African accent.
Yeah, it's probably become
African South African accent.
And I apologize if it's racist to do that. I have realized for the first time the other day that might be a racist thing,
but
to
it's
imitate
somebody to us.
It is endearing to us.
That's why you do it.
It's weird, right?
I miss that accent. I miss being around that accent. And that's like the quintessential African South African accent.
Well, it is. But that's the problem with, although not anymore, I think, but it's changing. But we're very English sounding. like English sounding. But the point is that, like, yeah, I only feel like that because of something's dictated to me that is a racist thing to do. Social conditioning. And it's exactly the same problem that I started feeling in the church. I felt like I was being conditioned.
Oh, that came back around real nice.
Yeah, I felt like I was being conditioned. And then the further I've gone along this journey, not to get ahead of myself, but I feel like I was programmed and along a lot of the way. And I also feel like I didn't have a choice because it happened from childhood.
You didn't.
And I had to be a Christian. So there's a lot to this moment where I'm sitting in church going like, I really want to question a few things here. And then I started wondering why I haven't questioned these things earlier in life.
So what would you call that moment of having these questions, and now that you are down the road, what would you call that moment?
I would say that not just a moment, that was the start of a word that I didn't understand at the time and might sound a little strange to you if you're listening and hearing this for the first time, but that was the beginning of what I would say was my awakening.
Right.
My awakening process.
Yes, and that word scares a lot of people who might have heard it but don't know what it is. And I mean, essentially, awakening in that sense just means starting to see things differently, right? So it could feel like, I don't know, church no longer feels like home. You're feeling something different, or you're asking questions that don't fit answers you've been given.
Right.
And I don't know, just something more authentic, true. You feel like you're missing out on maybe even connection to things that we're around on a day-to-day basis, like nature. And I'm going to put it out there, like plant medicine and things that we're given. You just start seeing things, your eyes just open a little bit more. And that essentially is awakening, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, connection's a massive one, because we spoke quite a bit in the first episode about that lack of connection with yourself, how you never really connect with your own body, because it's always an outside faith. It's always a calling on something. So there's embodiment things there. But I didn't not only feel connected to myself, but I started questioning the connection with others 100%. In the church as well. Like it started bugging me a little bit, some of the familiarity and
that's always been something that's been a little strange to me.
Like just the hugging and the...
Not even...
We come from an evangelical movement, so it's very touchy.
Yeah, for you, that was a big issue, like your space being invaded. I mean,
have you been to the bathroom? It doesn't matter if it's a public toilet or a church. People do not wash their hands. They do not. It's hard to realize that and be in a touchy-feely movement, okay?
Oh, there's a lot of laying on of hands.
I didn't ask to be hugged. I did not ask to be hugged.
Oh, gosh. From my perspective, it was more of like the permission to speak into your life and say things to you because you're in the same church. Even if it's someone that's seen you like 3 times, it's okay to go over and like not offend someone, but speak to someone as if you know them.
Say whatever you want as well.
I have a story I remember in a Dubai church that we were at. I had this very cool like gift that my sister had brought me from Milan, and it was a cool scarf.
Oh my gosh, this story!
And it had a skull, and it wasn't even a skull and crossbones. It was actually a skull, and it had a skull with 2 swords. It was actually more like piratey than deathly. Anyway, and so this is my example of like overstepping. Like a woman came up to me really confrontationally and said, you're wearing death around your neck. You know, you're inviting death into this room and you're inviting death into your life. Yeah. You know, that's of the devil. And I was like, what? Are you fucking kidding me? Like, this is in my head. Like, I didn't, right back then I was really insecure and really didn't hold my space well and speak up for myself. And so I felt really bad because she said, like, you know, our kids are here and like they're scared of your scarf. I'm sorry, I'm just sharing how ridiculous
it's
it is.
Wild.
But back then I didn't say anything. I didn't take the scarf off, which I was really proud of. But I didn't speak up for myself or stand up for it, but I questioned probably for like I don't think I wore it again. Let's just say that.
Yeah, you didn't.
And I
It's a sign of
questioned.
death.
No, I didn't wear it to church again. Sorry, I've worn that scarf everywhere else. I didn't wear it to church again, and already there I'm like, why has that woman been given permission to make me act a certain way?
Right.
And so for me, a lot of that happened constantly, especially as a woman in the church. And so, yeah.
But people are only operating according to what they're being shown and what they've seen.
Yes.
And that is the culture. And so
yes, it's culture.
I can understand somebody listening now maybe saying, yeah, well, that's just one person or that's another. You get these difficult people. And yeah, there are a lot of excuses we can make about a lot of different things that happen in the church. The reality is that these people are given this freedom within this culture. And there's opposite freedoms as well. There's ones where people are not free and will just look you up and down, like some of the traditional churches, and they won't say anything, but they'll just distance themselves from you. It's the same thing. I mean, it's just different programming. But I think what's amazing is like the skull and crossbones, the sign of death, and yet the crucifix literally is the greatest sign of death. In fact, they would not wear it around their neck in biblical times because it was a sign of death and to be feared.
Wow, you're so right.
Anyway, let's move on. You're right. I mean, it's just the emotional like untethering of things and feeling guilty.
Yes, with all of this stuff, this disorientation, you feel like that's kind of what we've spoken about being awakening, or this, which is basically essentially the start of the process of you just widening your gaze and your understanding, right?
Yeah, you're kind of like realizing, like, hang on, is there like a different way to do this? Like, is there a different, like, what is this really the way it's meant to be?
Yeah. So what for you, why did you start asking those questions? Like, what is like the crack that led to?
Well, I think like there's so many little things along the journey, like that was a moment. The response from people was a moment. Just like little breadcrumbs, really, if you look at it. But then, obviously, the conversation with my friend, and then the book, and then what really followed quickly after the book was Ancient Apocalypse.
Yeah, speak about that.
On Netflix, which I highly recommend everybody go and watch. And there were two things that were really interesting about this. One is Graham Hancock, who also wrote the book Fingerprints of the Gods, was like a high no-read author in Christianity, in Christian circles. Yeah, don't read him because he's saying weird shit. Well, just turns out that he's got historical bias and science backing all of his weird shit. And the thing that this did for me was it actually just opened up my mind, honestly, my understanding about the view of history.
Right.
And he speaks into prehistory, and it just blew my mind wide open that most of my life had been focused on around 6,000 years of human history.
Okay.
And there's a possible 250,000 years of human history. And then I started thinking about my beliefs based in that period of time.
Or more than that, to be fair. We don't even know.
Or more than that, exactly. I'm being quite modest, actually. But let's just think about that, though. 250,000 years. I mean, they've got physical scientific evidence of civilization. So what this did is it took my whole Christian worldview of believing that I know everything about God and humanity and just blew it wide open. And it rocked me because I was like, okay, I don't know. I actually don't know. Now I don't feel like I know anything.
Yeah, because how can a moment in history that is seemingly so significant that it leads to literally the salvation of the whole world, how could that little blip and moment in history called Jesus happen only 2,000 years ago?
Yeah.
But 250 or 240 something thousand years into humanity. Why then?
And the why then thing is an interesting thing in Christianity, like why then? And it always bugged me that everybody before then was just doomed by this God. And that always bugged me. And there was this whole thing of, there's a waiting room or there's paradise, whatever. Let's just understand that we don't know. No, everything we're reading in this Bible that has not been around for all that long, when you think about it, is not read through the correct lens anyway. We just cover up a lot of things by saying, oh, there's a word paradise in the Bible, so it's a waiting room. It started to lose me.
Yeah.
It just started to lose me in all of it.
Well, that's where the big questions came, but there were other sides answering the other side of those questions really well with evidence. Yeah. And we've only ever been given, in my opinion, opinions about what the Bible really is about.
Right.
Which sounds so bad now.
I know, it's so bad. I know.
But it's not. This is our journey, right? And this is how I feel. And so that statement feels like truth to me now.
Yes.
But it was a journey to get there.
And if you are listening to this and you are going through some of this doubt, or you've left the church, or, obviously the people we're trying to speak with, I will say that, like, it can feel very despondent in the beginning, and it can feel very lonely, and you can feel very lost, and you can feel duped. Like, you can feel like you were suckered into this thing, and how did I believe that? I consider myself a smart person, and yet the more I go along this awakening journey, the more I realize that, I definitely didn't really know what was going on at that time. But I will say that it does come around, and you do start to see the good things about it as well at some point. And I never saw the church as wrong necessarily. I saw it as very narrow.
Yes, we got there real quick.
Still seeking a relationship with God.
Yeah.
But just a very narrow way.
Yes. It's not wrong. We keep saying that. That's what makes us feel better about saying it this way, is that it's not essentially like wrong from top to bottom. There are a lot of good truths, and there are a lot of good teachings and lessons out of it, but it's a very, very narrow path to get to something that's actually so much greater. And so
I'm gritting my teeth, because I'm trying to go along the journey of where I was at the time. And right now I feel differently to that statement, but I don't want to get ahead of myself.
No, don't.
So at that time, that's what I was feeling.
Same, we both got there.
Yeah, but it does beg the question of if you could discover these things aside of the format anyway. And if you need the narrowness. But anyway, that's maybe for another time. It just left me wondering, is there more to it? Like, is there more? And so the universal Christ really gave language to that, and it really gave the key understanding of that Christ is not Jesus' last name, but that Christ is the spirit of life, essentially, the essence of everything.
And that's where my journey started, because you left church first. And so you were kind of on the journey, and I was still trying to go by myself, which there's a lot of interesting stories as to how that unfolded, but I'm not going to get into it. I just kind of felt pushed out a little bit because you had already taken this decision. So I don't know that there was much space for
your normal seat wasn't available anymore, and
I said, don't go.
Nobody was very inviting for you to come and sit with them. And
it got weird.
You felt like a visitor again, basically.
I did. Like every week, I think I just moved a couple of rows back until I was pretty much out the door. Yeah. No, but physically, that's actually what happened, because I think the last time I was there, I sat right at the back on the corner chair closest to the door, and then I just didn't come back. But so Universal Christ was my first ever, I guess, thought about anything outside of the paradigm of what I knew. And the main thing for me was that the Christ spirit, conscious spirit, whatever you want to call it, is in everything and everyone. And what that got really big for me, because I remember coming into the charismatic church only as like a 30-year-old, and the first question that the pastor's wife asked me was like, are you filled with the Spirit? Do you have the Spirit? Are you, I guess essentially she was asking me if I was saved, but then it turned out she was actually asking me if I could speak in tongues, which I didn't even know what the heck that was. And so for me...
Yalla Habibi. That's a different tongue.
Yeah. And so for me, it became very clear very quickly that what I needed to believe was like, you only have the Spirit in you and you are only of God if you're saved, essentially. And then you're a really good Christian if you've gotten tongues from Holy Spirit and you can speak in tongues. Then
there is this unspoken level thing, for sure.
Yeah, you're way up the ladder at that point. So that pressure comes on for that too. But when it opened up and was like, of course the Spirit, of course Christ's Spirit is in everything and everyone on this planet. It has to be. It's conscious. Now I know it is consciousness. But for me, as someone who creates, because when I was a choreographer, there was a piece of me as choreographer in that piece and on those dances. There was no way that piece could stand apart from me as the creator. So I know that there's a story to how we got separated from God. Then nothing would be living, in my opinion.
Yeah, right. Everything that has life is supported by the Christ Spirit.
100%.
And we just have to understand it's not Jesus Christ. It's,
no. Yes.
It was probably just a description for him. If you think about it, it was just Jesus, the life bringer, or as we would understand now, probably the consciousness bringer.
There's so much
now. There's so much down this road now, but all good stuff. And it is, I'll tell you one thing that has been happening so much through this awakening process, because that is what we're speaking about, is this awakening. And, I'm going to let you know what that might feel like for you if you're going through that right now. But one of the things that was really interesting for me is that I started feeling like I was getting more answers and less confusion than I had during my entire Christian life.
Just a long time.
I started realizing, like, in 40 years, I'd always lived under this massive confusion. Why isn't God helping me? Why isn't God showing up? Why did God do that? Why don't I feel? Why is it constant? It was actually quite tiring, I realized.
Yeah.
Constantly wondering why I'm putting my desires, my problems, my callings, whatever, before God. And I couldn't really, if I was honest, see more movement than would have happened if I just worked hard.
Yeah, true.
At it, like I can say people showed up on many occasions, and I think that is beautiful, and that's the human race. And I believe they were maybe prompted at times by a living spirit, let's say the Christ Spirit, to do certain things. But it wasn't related to the model of church. It wasn't related to the things that I was believing. And those were the things that were making me really confused about why God wasn't showing up the way that we were taught that he would, or that he did previously. And so you start becoming, I think the best word is just unhinged.
Yes.
That was shared with me. It's just like you do feel like you're just starting to unhinge a little bit.
And it is, because as soon as you start seeing bigger, then those questions become more important, right? Because in the church, the questions don't seem as important because you just assume someone will have an answer for it, because everyone always does.
Yes, so because there's a lot of linguistical
gymnastics,
yogaization going on.
Yeah. And I mean, I had so many questions, again, because I came into this movement. I grew up in a Methodist church, but it was really just because that's what South Africans did on Sunday. There was no real anything there. I didn't even feel like a need to have to go, because I didn't for a long time. And then when I came back to the church in my 30s, then I started asking questions.
There was a bit more space for you to ask questions, but not a lot. Let's understand this. Like, I know that you might see things that you had like some freedom all of a sudden, but as a woman in church, you didn't really get to ask as many questions. If you progress to be a leader, then you could be around some of the leaders more, then you can ask a few more questions, but you still have to, it's unspoken. There's still questions you're not allowed to ask or shouldn't ask, or just really weird hierarchy.
Coming from nothing into the evangelical Christian movement feels like everything. Feels like finally I'm free. So that's what I'm saying, that perspective.
And I think that's what a lot of people are experiencing right now. If they do look for a church, they go to something that's like funky, it's vibey, like there's music, there's lights, people are friendly, all that stuff, and they think, oh, this is it. I'm free.
Yes. And there is actually, I'm always going to play the other side of it. There is a lot of freedom that I did actually discover coming into the evangelical Christian church. One of them being, for me, dreams. Like, it's something I never had. No, I always had dreams, but it wasn't something I was aware of, that there is actually any spirituality behind it. And so for me, that's one of the biggest things I found in it. And so it was very freeing at the time. But now looking back on it, it's a really hard place to like weigh things up in. I've never been more free than I am right now.
Yes, but that gave you a place to practice and be exposed to it, and things like the prophetic and things like taking dreams seriously and numbers and colors and things like that. These things do matter.
Yeah.
They've come to matter more and more. And the ancients all knew this, actually. It's just our little period of time that has lost all of this ancient wisdom. But yeah, you're absolutely right. It can feel very free. And, you know, in all honesty, the movement we were in, the evangelical charismatic church, although there are mega churches, is still probably not the majority of Christianity. I mean, even if you consider Catholicism and a lot of the other movements, most don't have an opportunity to practice these things.
Yeah.
So it is even more narrow than what we're speaking about. But nonetheless, religion is religion. They all have their structure and they all have the ways they're doing. So this was this awakening that I really started going through, and it has been some time going through this, but that part of awakening, the first moments of just being like, oh, this might not be it. You're not going crazy. You don't have to feel guilty. You're not doing anything wrong. You're actually heading in the right direction. So you should be free. Shouldn't you be sovereign and free to ask the questions you want to ask about? And is God not big enough that if you ask a wrong question, he'll be okay, or she'll be okay, or it'll be okay with it?
Yeah.
Don't worry so much. If you are fearful and stressed about things, ask yourself why you've been programmed to be that way. So just be free for a moment and discover what is probably the most important part of your life. So signs that you might be awakening are kind of like this, like if you're losing interest in religious performance.
Oh, yeah. So big, that one.
Do you remember the first church we went to in Austin?
Yes.
I'll just say it. When we went to, should I say it? No, I shouldn't. Probably shouldn't shame.
No, don't say it.
But I mean, charismatic movement is pretty loud, drums, lights, but this was another level. This was club level. This was club level. The end result of that story also was not very healthy. And that wasn't even my story. Anyway, so if you're losing interest in that religious performance, that can be a sign that you're awakening. Or if you're feeling drawn to nature or intuition or embodiment, like me, if I just started realizing, wow, actually, I never go internally. I never consider myself, my personal growth. I never actually feel part of my body. I feel drawn to be out in nature. A lot of people in Australia actually would not come to church on a Sunday because they were at the beach, and that would really upset me. It would really upset me.
I long to be with them, honestly.
I know, and now I realize actually they were being drawn to nature. Isn't that a beautiful thing?
Yeah.
Instead of sitting in between four walls. This one was a big one for me, questioning authority or religious certainty. Like, not even different denominations can agree with each other, but that's questioning true. Authority. Why do these people have this authority over me? Why? Why do I act a certain way around them? Why do I bend to everything they say? Why do I change my schedule to help them? Why do I pay them money in the name of God, but don't ask where that money is being used or going with things? All of these things, like, why do I listen to these particular people?
I think one of the big things that I felt from that authoritative thing was when coming to America. Like, before there'd been things, but coming to America, especially in the time of, like, we were here 2016, we were here 2020, there's a lot of, like, chaos and pandemic and opinions on certain things, and including presidencies and all of that stuff. And when it became really clear in the church that if you did not vote the certain way, or if you weren't of the same opinion of the guy that was on stage who was making it very clear what your point of view should be about politics, about health, about vaccines, about masks, about all that stuff, when it becomes very dictated from the stage, that made me feel icky. Like, it really made me feel like this just doesn't feel right.
Yeah, I was a little politically brainwashed still, so I didn't pick it up as much, but I did it did cross my mind that it's not really the place for it.
That's what it is. It doesn't matter.
It doesn't, not even opinion. Like outright, you must vote for. It was just under the breath or little comments here or there.
It was very obvious.
But the one thing that I think you felt empathy about was people that were sitting there that might have held to a different belief.
100%. It really bugged me and I could feel it in the room. I'm a feeler. And when things like that were done, I could feel like the sadness in people and the confusion in the room as to people who truly felt they had different values. But it's
no, and there are moments there where it goes beyond just like the political thing. It goes to you wondering, what are we actually here for? Like, why are we here to talk about this or to be nudged a certain way? Like, why are we here? And I think a lot of church for me became that. Why are we here? I just started seeing a lot of things that actually were directed more towards us and our own performances than towards some being that we believe to be omniscient and divine. And I mean, there was just a lot of stuff, a lot of fluff in hopes that God will arrive in the meeting.
Oh, yeah.
It's hard to think of now. But, then, this might be a big thing for you if you're awakening. I went through this. It's a big telltale sign. Feeling grief, anger, freedom took me a while to feel, and wonder, but all at once.
Yeah.
Like I literally felt like for 4 months I grieved leaving the church. I was grieving all the things that I had done in all the churches worldwide. All the teaching, all the preaching, all the sitting at dinners, lunches, breakfasts, coffees, convincing people of what I believed was 100% true and right. And I really was very, very depressed at that thought. And you have to heal from that. You just have to heal from that. And there's a few ways that you can heal from that. The one is by understanding that you were still of good intent and wanting to help. You did see something good and wanted to be part of doing something good. You did recognize that your spirit, your soul was seeking a higher power, and that higher power did exist, because it does. There were these sort of things. And if you were teaching or preaching or anything, then you just got to understand as well, like you just had those same things, wanting to help, but to a higher extent. And so the grief is one thing, the anger is another. Like I just felt angry that I'd been sort of duped along the way.
Yeah.
I felt angry at myself for falling for it. I don't know.
You make that sound really harsh though, because it's less of you falling for it, it's more of being conditioned into it.
Right.
And so
that's true.
For anyone who is feeling that, like the blinders were pulled over your eyes, they literally were, without your permission,
yes.
essentially. And so you didn't fall for anything. It's like everything in society that we're socially conditioned to. Sometimes you just don't know that that's what it is. And everything feels true. For me, it felt like truth. My journey I feel like is a little more, I mean, yours was deep. You were in really deep. I did really well with distancing myself from the things.
Spent money on certificates. That's how deep I was in. I have money on a degree. Who does a degree in theology?
I just gave him the shush sign because I was literally just talking.
That's why we don't do video.
For me, I think I was really good at distancing myself from the things I felt weren't good, even though I was forced into doing a lot of stuff I didn't feel happy about doing. I think for me, I did find God. Like I found that connection, that feeling that I had and still have inside of me that I know is my true, authentic connection to God. I did find it in that. I found my gifting, which for me is really like prophetic. I did have the opportunity to use my voice and learn to talk in front of people. I always go back and look at like all the positives in it, but my biggest grief came from I felt like I completely lost my relationship with Jesus. Because very quickly I didn't believe in individual salvation in the way that it came through Jesus. And that's a whole topic we'll discuss at some point in the future. But for me, the grief was like I felt like I lost a friend because I really had a very cool connection to Jesus, and I really, really admired who he was as a man and his divinity. And I think for me, that was the hardest thing to deal with.
Yeah, I didn't feel connected to him at all anymore.
I didn't know what to do with him. I was like, well, because everything about Jesus was, he came to earth to die for our sins and was resurrected so that we could be saved and go to heaven one day. That was my viewpoint of Jesus. And because I'm an empath, his story I really empathized with him and his story. And so I had this, and that was his story. And then when his story changed in my understanding, and I knew deep down inside, it wasn't a thinking that changed. It was a knowing that changed about Jesus.
You feel like you've been lied
his story. To. Yes, a little bit. Well, not on purpose. People don't know that what they're telling is not the full story. And once the story changed, I was like, I don't know what to do with Jesus.
Yeah, no, totally. I totally get that. I didn't know for the longest, till very recently, actually.
Well, yes, for the record, I feel closer to Jesus then, and I know him so much more than I ever did. So the story doesn't end there. There is more, and we will unpack that.
But at the same time, at that particular time, think about how much you do in the name of Jesus. You pray grace in the name of Jesus. You heal in the name of Jesus.
You pray.
You pray in the name of Jesus.
All your practices go.
Everything is in the name of Jesus. This line that we have, but haven't really ever explored. And what does it mean, in the name of Jesus? What example was Jesus setting?
What was Jesus really doing?
That language actually meant something. Yes. Why was he really here? Why was he this example? And if not for salvation, because if it's in the name of Jesus and you believe it's for salvation, then you should be crucified. It's the only way to follow his example. So who is this person, basically? Who is this person that you've been attaching every part of your faith to, if not that? But at the same time as going through this sort of anger and grief and there's all this confusion and stuff, you're also starting to experience freedom. You also start to experience wonder. You're like, oh, this is what I can do with this Sunday. And it's actually nice. We spend time together. We had these amazing conversations. We met these other people. It sounds like human life. Instead of I was at a church from 7:30 in the morning until 3 in the evening, in the afternoon. But it just seemed like that, the meetings during the week, all the stuff that you end up committing to, I don't know. I can just tell you that it felt free.
Yes, it felt free. And I always look as well on like the plus side. The positive side is like church for me became outdoors. Nature became church, and it felt again so much more authentic and so much. I was literally connecting
closer to God there.
To God, yes, I could feel God in everything, in every tree, in every blade of grass I saw, in every animal. How can that be wrong?
I just wanted to finish your sentence just to prove that I wasn't interrupting you earlier. I was just finishing your sentence for you, my darling.
Nice try, whatever. Yes, and then I was like, I've never felt this close to God. I've never known things about myself as deeply as I do without even having read about it or studied it up. I knew things about me and I knew things about God I hadn't known in 15 years by just being in nature. And again, I know it's my journey and people can say like, whatever. I wanted to believe that, but I mean, go try it. Go try it.
The freedom was awesome. And what you're talking about now is the wonder. You start seeing this wonder of that God is outside of the walls and outside of the building. And I think some of the freedom was also just not being under that control, like just people watching you and people telling you where to be and what to do. It's just, why do you go to church? I think if you are even questioning if you're going through an awakening, just ask yourself that question. Why do you go?
Well, I know what people will answer mostly would be, I'm going for community and to be around people who believe the same way as me. And that's what we did. I mean, that's our community. Our church always was our community. Our community was our church. And that's a valid reason, because I know moving to I always bring it back around to the positive, but I know moving around to countries, I don't know how we would have gotten into friendship with anyone if it weren't for the church. I think it would have been really hard for me.
I don't know. I think that's being proven wrong in our lives right now. I think if we were more open and if we weren't under that paradigm of that, because we're a Christian in this country, the best way for us to meet people is to go to church.
You're right. I am wrong.
Exactly.
No, I'm wrong.
If our paradigm were different and we were open to meeting people, we might have even had richer lives.
I'm not wrong in thinking that would be people's answer, but I'm wrong in believing that that's the truth, because I missed out on a lot of great, deep friendships with non-believers. As a dancer, I was a performer in Dubai. Like, I was in the entertainment. I'm trying not to have regret about this, but I was in the entertainment industry, like in the hub of things. And I would leave things early because, I was Christian. I would not enjoy myself to a certain level because I had to uphold this image of a woman of God. And I had such good friends, and I have good friends still from Dubai, but I just never felt like I could be me. I was never free to be me in any of those circumstances, because I didn't want to disappoint God or my faith or my church or my,
Your job there is to get them saved anyway. That is your...
And you have that in the back of your mind all the time. And how much...
It's hard to be authentic with people when there's this little piece of your brain that's angling all the time.
Yes, and how you can't just accept them for who they are. I think that's the biggest thing. I now accept...
You were very good at that. You were, in all fairness, I mean, you accepted everybody. I
loved everybody.
That was definitely a different thing for me. I was way more judgmental and bound.
No, because I'm a feeler, and I do have love. I have a very big, loving, open heart. And so I was able to still operate differently a little bit inside the church and outside the church. I kind of let those lines blur, I guess, quite a bit for me, because I really love people.
Yeah.
But still, I know the depth of those friendships that they could have gotten to, and I know the person I could have been freely with them.
Yeah.
That I missed out on.
At the same time, you weren't free to bring your gay or bisexual friends to church. I mean, you were in a way, but you knew that culturally it would have been difficult for them. And so, yes, you were open. Sure, you were open. But the model you were under is supposed to be one of the most open Christianities in the world. But it isn't. If you really put into practice, it isn't. Maybe more so now. But
they would be welcomed in, but on the premise that we're all in agreement that the reason they're there is to change their ways and be saved.
Exactly. On the premise that they're sinners.
And if it doesn't happen, then, you tried. Good on you. If it does happen, you're like front page news for the rest of
you turned a gay person to Christianity?
Yeah.
And now they're working on their sin?
It just makes me feel so
oh my gosh, it's hard. Okay, sometimes some of these things. Look, I think one of the things to acknowledge is going through an awakening, starting to realize these things. It is like leaving the church kind of feels like a bit of a death.
It's a death.
It just feels like a death. It feels like a death of an old life. It feels like a death of yourself in many ways. And these actually sound like terrible things, but they're actually good things. It feels like a death of community, like the loss of community struck me. I didn't expect that, and I didn't really see it coming.
Yeah, for me, the biggest death was identity. I didn't know who I was anymore, and that's, I think...
I've got to agree with that.
So do you. Yeah. And that's the essential part of awakening, I think, from wherever you come from. Even if you're not a churchgoer, even if you're a Muslim or anyone that's awakening.
It is all of awakening.
Or Harry on the street who doesn't believe anything. Awakening.
Why, Harry? Why?
I don't know.
Come
like
on,
a
Harry.
Good guy.
Get on board.
No, Harry's a good guy. He's just taking his time. But even if you're Harry on the street who doesn't believe in anything, you're still going to die to a certain version of you that you believed you were. Because when you go through this process of allowing things to widen and broaden for you, you discover so much more about yourself.
Yeah.
There's only positive things that happen, no matter who you are, where you come from. But that death of identity that will happen to everyone, because it has to, is excruciating. And that's why we're having these conversations. We're having these conversations to tell people who might feel like death right now because they've lost their entire identity that you're okay. This is going to be okay. And the other side of this is so much better than you can imagine. And I just want to put that out there as a little encouragement for anyone 100%. Who's there right now. This is not the end. Die to those things you need to die to, as hard as it may be, and start discovering who the heck you are in the expansiveness of everything, because it's epic.
That's the thing that's not woohoo. It can sound woohoo. Like you need awakening is just starting the journey of discovering who you actually are.
Remembering
who you really are. Remembering who you actually are, because you've forgotten through all the programs and things.
Oh,
but look,
so many good things to talk about.
It's like, wouldn't you want to know? Like, you've got one life, right? Like, just one, and not very long, actually. And wouldn't you want to know, like, when you look in the mirror and you stare deep, I've always said this, you stare deep into your own eyes in the mirror, you know there's more. You know there's more than just the physical, like, being that's looking at. You know there's something inside of you. There's some, you can call it spirit or soul or whatever you identify with, but you know that there's more. And so the fact that you will allow something to dictate the physical part of you to do things all the time, when you know there's more in you to discover and yet don't prioritize that, is actually quite bizarre if you think about it.
Mm-hmm.
You should be prioritizing figuring out who that is looking back at you. Because when you start discovering that, that's when you're really going to realize how to live and what life is.
Yeah. And I'm going to keep changing those words to, it is a discovery, but the biggest thing to know is it's a remembering. If you can get on board with that. We only figured that out later on in the journey, and everyone will too, but it's essentially just remembering who you and why you and when you and where you and all the what's about
your
all
real
of that.
identity.
Yeah. Beautiful.
So yours was identity. I mean, for me, when I say community, I recognize that community was not, for me, real community. It was a Sunday community. These were people that I saw once a week or maybe twice a week, whatever. There were some friends, but very few. But when I say community, it's more like even trying to spend time with those people in other situations, I feel a disconnect. Like we weren't speaking the same language anymore. Like I didn't feel the freedom to actually, after I started awakening, I didn't feel the freedom to speak about the things I was discovering.
Yeah, it's hard.
Because the language just, it's difficult to think of somebody who's still in a certain paradigm, refusing to shift, and you're trying to explore outside of that paradigm, and they just don't want to, for whatever reason. They're conditioned, or there's fear, or whatever it is. But when you lose community, it's the thoughts as well. It's like, I wouldn't call so-and-so to speak about this, or I wouldn't do that with so-and-so because they won't understand. And as your language changes, because think about it, when you, in the Christian faith, your language is a certain way. You have a certain language that we use. There's certain words, certain things, certain phraseologies, things like that. That will change. And then, like, you speak in different languages with people. So it's just difficult, but it's also a doorway to something much deeper. Imagine you never learned, imagine you never discovered yourself. So all of this might sound like, oh, this is so sad and this is so hard. I'd rather just stay. It's easier. Yes, you could choose easy if you want, but it's not the doorway to a really fulfilling, deep life.
Yes, 100%. And again, just to bring it back around, because I kind of said this earlier, just giving people like a shout out to be like, hey, you've got this, you can do this. You're not alone in this.
Right.
The cool thing actually that we're seeing a lot of, just because we're involved in community that's, you know, on the same journey as we are right now. And what we can see is this is actually happening to a lot of people right now.
Right, like, which makes you feel like you're not crazy.
No, I know I'm not crazy. But so, like, there's so many conversations going on about this. There's so many books you can read about this.
Yes.
Again, I just want to, before we like wrap up, want to mention the Richard Rohr book. It's The Universal Christ by Richard Rohr. And then there's also a follow-on book that was really, really insightful, that follows straight on from that, which is Everything is Sacred. And it's actually the practices and reflections of the Universal Christ. So it kind of gives you practical insight into this universal Christ thinking. And then the third book I read from Richard Rohr, and these were my first 3 books I read, is The Divine Dance, which really just speaks about the synergy and the choreography and, you know, your inclusivity in the Trinity, if that's still like kind of where you're at coming out of church believing in. It just kind of, again, all of this is just expansive. Every step is just a little bit expanded, a little more expanded. We're not going full blown from the get-go. We're just expanding our awareness and remembering who we are through all these stages. And so again, you're not alone in this. You know, there's so much out there. Is there any other resources? I mean, Ancient Apocalypse is what you would suggest.
I think Ancient Apocalypse was definitely a good start point. That book was a great start point as well. And then I think just being aware, you know, just being aware of why you feel a certain way, why you are asking certain questions. Like if you feel like you're waking up from something, what are you waking up from? Like, and I think you're just so right. Like you're not alone. There's so much stuff now that's happening. And that's also why we're doing this podcast, because we want to walk this path with you. We want to remind you that there is so much more than what you might have been shown till now, or what you might have been believing till now. And I'll just say this, that often we are so conditioned that we feel like we need permission for something.
Well, I was just going to go into this. You go.
Okay. No. You go ahead, and then I'll finish what I was going to say.
Well, yeah, the permission thing's cool. I was just going to say, in this process, one of the things you have to learn is to trust yourself, because there's so much about not trusting what you're feeling. And in the church, you run to someone every time to check and hold you accountable and like confirm what you're feeling. Like that, you always need confirmation from other people. I think the permission, yes, but have the trust in yourself that you have an intuition, you have a spirit residing within you that guides you, and trust yourself on this journey, because it's actually quite fun if you do.
Yeah, absolutely right. And I think I realized in a point where I didn't need to know more. I knew enough. I realized that point quite quickly, that I believe there's a God out there, and I believe that God created me with the best interest in heart. I can see that because the whole planet is designed to help me survive, and many other reasons. But I just realized, like in Christianity, I always had to have the answer.
True.
I always wanted to know. I always had to know. And you might not be like that, but to a degree, there's a certain pressure of growth around that and discipleship. So we often feel like we need permission to do things. And I want to leave you with an affirmation that you can actually say to yourself. I learned this from my wife, from Affirmations. Affirmations are things that you can speak to yourself throughout the day, and you can actually speak this to yourself through this process. And if I were you, I would start doing this if you feel this disconnect. But it's basically just giving you permission to say that you're safe to ask, you're safe to evolve, you're safe to not have all the answers. And so you can just repeat that to yourself, and look at yourself in the mirror maybe, and tell yourself that, because you're told face to face so many things that you've believed in for so long. So why don't you do it face to face for yourself? Just stand in front of the mirror and just remind yourself, I am safe to ask, I'm safe to evolve, I'm safe to not have all the answers.
Love it. We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you found it valuable, please share it with someone who might need it too.
Head over to unchurchingpodcast.com for more resources or to book a free mentorship call. Sometimes you just need someone to process with.
Remember to subscribe to the podcast and follow us on Instagram at Unchurching Podcast. Till next time.
Cheers. Ciao. Goodbye.